July 19th, 1985, around 3:30 a.m., a basement in Queens, New York. Paul Castellano, 70 years old, the boss of the Gambino crime family, was asleep in his mansion. John Gotti, 45 years old, was planning his murder. Castellano had no idea what was coming. He trusted his underboss. He trusted the structure. He trusted the rules. 6 months later, Castellano was dead on a Manhattan sidewalk. 5 bullets. His body left in the street. The hit took less than 90 seconds. This wasn't just another mob assassination. Paul Castellano was the head of America's most powerful crime family. He controlled construction unions, controlled concrete contracts in New York City, controlled billions in illegal revenue. Goodfellas shows the Mafia as a world of rules and respect, but the truth is more violent. Castellano didn't just get killed, he was betrayed by the very system that put him in power, and that betrayal required planning, silence, and institutional consent. This is the story of who really killed Paul Castellano. From John Gotti's calculated ambition to Sammy Gravano's strategic loyalty, from the Gambino family's internal fractures to Castellano's own arrogant mistakes. This isn't about one conspiracy. It's about a power structure deciding the boss had to go, and once the structure decides, survival becomes impossible. But here's what the public never learned. Castellano wasn't killed because he was weak. He was killed because the men below him wanted what he had, and they were willing to murder their way to the top. Constantino Paul Castellano was born June 26, 1915 in Brooklyn, New York. His parents were Italian immigrants from Sicily. His father was a butcher. His mother raised 8 children. Paul grew up in a neighborhood controlled by the Gambino crime family. By age 19, he was running numbers for local bookmakers. By age 25, he married the sister of Carlo Gambino, the future boss. That marriage changed everything. Paul wasn't just a street criminal anymore, he was family. Carlo Gambino, 15 years older than Castellano, was climbing the ranks of what would become the Gambino family. He brought Paul into the organization. Castellano wasn't a killer, he wasn't a street guy, but he was intelligent, and intelligence has value in organized crime. Carlo Gambino, who became boss in 1957, was building an empire. He controlled operations across New York, New Jersey, and Florida. Gambino ran construction rackets, labor unions, loan sharking, and gambling operations. Gambino needed administrators, guys who could manage money, guys who understood business. Paul Castellano fit perfectly. By age 40, Castellano had become a capo in the Gambino family. He ran legitimate businesses as fronts for money laundering. He owned a meat distribution company. He controlled construction contracts. He made millions. Carlo Gambino trusted him. Here's what you need to understand about Paul Castellano. He was 6 feet tall, heavy-set, with gray hair and expensive suits. He lived in a mansion on Staten Island called the White House. He kept his distance from street operations. He didn't socialize with soldiers. He didn't hang out in social clubs. Castellano saw himself as a businessman, not a gangster. That attitude would get him killed. Henry Hill, who moved in Mafia circles during this era, later said Castellano acted like a CEO, not a boss. He made decisions from boardrooms, not backrooms. Most soldiers respected his business sense, but respect isn't the same as loyalty, and Castellano never understood the difference. By 1976, Carlo Gambino was dying. He had one final decision to make. Who would succeed him as boss of the Gambino family? The obvious choice was his underboss, Aniello Dellacroce. Dellacroce, 62 years old, was a traditional mobster. He'd killed his way up, he commanded loyalty from the soldiers, he understood the streets, but Gambino didn't choose Dellacroce. He chose Paul Castellano. Why? Because Castellano was family. Because Castellano understood the business side. Because Gambino believed the future of the Mafia was in construction and labor rackets, not street crime. On October 15, 1976, Carlo Gambino died of a heart attack. He was 74. Paul Castellano became boss of the Gambino crime family. Dellacroce was named underboss. But Dellacroce was furious. He believed he'd earned the position, he'd bled for the family, he'd killed for the family, and now some businessman who'd never pulled a trigger was running things. Gambino had made a choice that would destroy the family from within. He just didn't live long enough to see it. Here's where the fracture begins. When Castellano became boss, he inherited a family divided into two factions. One faction, led by Dellacroce, controlled traditional operations. Hijacking crews, gambling, loan sharking, street-level violence, these were the guys who'd grown up in the life. Guys like John Gotti, Angelo Ruggiero, and Gene Gotti. They made money the old way, through robbery, extortion, and murder. The other faction, controlled by Castellano, focused on white-collar crime. Construction rackets, union infiltration, stock fraud. These were the guys who wore suits to meetings and avoided headlines. Guys like Thomas Bellotti, James Faya, and Danny Marino. They made millions without getting their hands dirty. Castellano didn't respect the street crews. He saw them as reckless, stupid, and dangerous. He kept raising their tribute payments. He limited their operations. He told them to stay away from drugs, but he didn't enforce those rules on his own people. Dellacroce's faction hated him for it. They paid more, earned less, and took all the risks while Castellano sat in his mansion counting money. That resentment built for years, and resentment always finds a target. Now, let's talk about John Gotti. Giovanni Gotti was born October 27, 1940 in the Bronx. His parents were Italian immigrants. His father worked construction when he could find work. His mother raised 13 children. John grew up poor in a neighborhood controlled by the Gambino family. By age 12, he was running errands for local bookies. By age 16, he joined a street gang called the Fulton Rockaway Boys. Gotti wasn't smart, he wasn't educated, but he was ambitious, and ambition is dangerous in organized crime. By age 28, Gotti had committed his first confirmed murder, a guy named James McBratney, who'd kidnapped and killed a Gambino associate. Gotti shot him in a Staten Island bar in 1973. He was arrested, convicted of attempted manslaughter, and served 4 years. When Gotti got out in 1977, Castellano was boss. Dellacroce sponsored Gotti's rise. He made Gotti a capo and gave him control of a crew operating out of the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club in Queens. Gotti's crew ran hijacking operations, gambling, and loan sharking. They made money, they were loyal to Dellacroce, and they hated Castellano. Here's what you need to understand about Gotti. He was charismatic. He was dressed in expensive suits. He tipped big. He threw parties. He made himself visible. Soldiers loved him. Civilians loved him. The media would later love him. But underneath the charm, Gotti was a killer. He'd murdered at least 3 people by 1985. He had no problem ordering more. Gotti saw Castellano as weak. A boss who lived in a mansion, who avoided the streets, who made rules he wouldn't enforce. Gotti wanted that position. He wanted power, money, the respect, but he had a problem. He couldn't kill Castellano himself. Castellano was the boss. Killing a boss without commission approval was a death sentence. If Gotti moved too early, the other families would retaliate. Dellacroce would have to disavow him. Gotti's own crew could turn on him, so Gotti waited. He built alliances. He watched for an opening, and in 1985, he found one. Let's examine what went wrong for Castellano. By 1984, Castellano was facing multiple problems. The FBI had installed bugs in his mansion. They were recording his conversations. They had evidence of construction bid rigging, labor racketeering, and murder conspiracies. Castellano knew he was being watched, but he didn't change his behavior. He kept holding meetings at the house. He kept discussing criminal operations. He gave the FBI everything they needed. On March 30th, 1984, Castellano was indicted on RICO charges along with several other Gambino members. The indictment outlined massive construction fraud, extortion, and murder. Castellano faced life in prison. That indictment changed the power dynamic inside the family. Soldiers started questioning whether Castellano could survive the case. If he went to prison, who would run things? Would Dellacroce take over? Would Gotti make a move? Castellano tried to maintain control, but his grip was slipping. Then, on December 2nd, 1985, Aniello Dellacroce died of lung cancer. He was 71 years old. Dellacroce's death removed the one person who could have stopped what came next. Dellacroce had kept Gotti in check. He'd maintained the peace between the factions. He'd served as a buffer between Castellano and the street crews. With Dellacroce gone, That buffer disappeared. Gotti was free to move. And he moved fast. Here's where the conspiracy begins. After Dellacroce's death, Gotti held a meeting with his closest associates. Sammy Gravano, 40 years old, was a capo in the Gambino family. He controlled construction rackets and ran a crew in Brooklyn. Gravano was respected. He was a moneymaker. He was also a killer. Gravano had murdered at least 10 people by 1985. Gotti needed Gravano's support. Without it, the other capos wouldn't follow. Gotti pitched the plan. Castellano had to go. The boss was weak. He was facing life in prison. He was bad for business. If they killed Castellano now, they could take control before the other families reacted. Gravano listened. He had his own reasons for wanting Castellano dead. Castellano had recently killed one of Gravano's close friends, a guy named Frank DeCicco, over a business dispute. Gravano wanted revenge. But revenge isn't the same as strategy. Gravano made a calculation. If he backed Gotti and the hit succeeded, he'd become underboss of the Gambino family. That meant power, money, and protection. If he refused, Gotti might kill him too. Gravano agreed. The conspiracy was set, but they needed more people. You can't kill a boss with 2 guys. You need shooters, drivers, lookouts. You need coordination. Gotti recruited Frank DeCicco, a respected capo who had access to Castellano. DeCicco would set up the meeting. Gotti recruited 4 shooters from his crew: Eddie Lino, John Carneglia, Anthony Center, and Joseph Testa. These were professional killers. They'd murdered dozens of people between them. The plan was simple: get Castellano to a public location, kill him on the street, make it fast, make it visible, send a message. The location they chose was Spark Steakhouse in Manhattan, a high-end restaurant where Castellano had scheduled a meeting with several capos on December 16, 1985. Castellano trusted the meeting. He trusted DeCicco. He had no reason to suspect anything. That trust would kill him. Now, let's talk about the execution. On December 16, 1985, around 5:30 p.m., Paul Castellano and his bodyguard Thomas Bellotti pulled up to Spark Steakhouse in a black Lincoln. The street was crowded. Christmas shoppers everywhere. Castellano stepped out of the car. He didn't see the 4 men in trench coats and fur hats standing near the entrance. Bellotti came around from the driver's side. The 4 shooters moved in. They pulled out semi-automatic pistols. They opened fire. Castellano was hit 6 times. Chest, head, torso. He collapsed on the sidewalk. Bellotti tried to run. They shot him in the back. He fell next to Castellano. The whole sequence took less than 20 seconds. The shooters walked away. Nobody stopped them. Nobody chased them. They disappeared into the crowd. John Gotti and Sammy Gravano were parked in a car across the street. They watched the hit go down. Once Castellano was confirmed dead, they drove away. Castellano's body lay on the sidewalk for 45 minutes before the coroner arrived. He was 70 years old. Thomas Bellotti was 45. Both men were dead. And the leadership of the Gambino family had just changed hands. Here's what makes this hit so effective. It required planning from multiple levels. Gotti had to recruit loyal shooters. Gravano had to bring other capos on board. DeCicco had to set up the meeting. The shooters had to execute in public without getting caught. And Castellano had to walk into the trap. Every piece had to fall into place. And it did because everyone involved wanted the same outcome: Castellano's death. But let's go deeper. Who specifically gave the order to kill Castellano? Officially, the commission had to approve any hit on a boss, but Gotti didn't ask for permission. He acted unilaterally. That was a massive violation of Mafia law, but Gotti bet that the other families wouldn't retaliate. Why? Because Castellano was facing federal charges. If Castellano went to prison, the Gambino family would be weakened. That weakness would affect the other family's interests. By killing Castellano before the trial, Gotti was solving a problem for everyone. The other bosses might not like it, but they'd accept it, and that's exactly what happened. After Castellano's death, the commission held a meeting. Gotti presented his case. Castellano was weak. Castellano was going to prison. Castellano had lost control of the family. Gotti had restored order. The commission didn't punish Gotti. They recognized him as the new boss of the Gambino family. Gotti had gambled and won, but winning doesn't mean escaping consequences. Here's what happened next. John Gotti became boss in January 1986. He ruled the Gambino family for 6 years. He became famous. The media called him the Dapper Don. He threw parties. He walked the streets like a celebrity. But the FBI was watching. They installed bugs in the Ravenite Social Club where Gotti held meetings. They recorded everything. Gotti's arrogance destroyed him. In December 1990, Gotti was arrested on RICO charges. The FBI had him on tape ordering murders, discussing criminal operations, and admitting to the Castellano hit. Sammy Gravano, facing life in prison, made a decision. He cooperated with the FBI. He testified against Gotti in court. He described the conspiracy. He named the shooters. He explained the plan. In April 1992, Gotti was convicted of murder, racketeering, and conspiracy. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. He died in prison in June 2002 from throat cancer. He was 61. Sammy Gravano entered witness protection. He later violated the terms of his agreement and was convicted of drug trafficking in 2000. He served 17 years and was released in 2017. Frank DeCicco was killed by a car bomb in April 1986, 4 months after Castellano's murder. The hit was ordered by the Genovese family as retaliation for Gotti's unauthorized killing of Castellano. And Paul Castellano. His body was buried in a cemetery in Brooklyn. His wife died 4 years later. His children stayed out of the life. Castellano's empire was dismantled. His construction rackets were taken over by Gotti's crew. His legacy was erased. Here's what Castellano's death reveals about the Mafia. It's not about rules, it's not about respect, it's not about the commission, it's about power. The Mafia will protect you as long as you're strong, but the second you show weakness, you're finished. No negotiation, no appeals, no mercy. Castellano showed weakness. He got indicted, he lost Dellacroce, he alienated his soldiers. That was enough. Gotti saw the opening and took it. One meeting, one conspiracy, one public execution. That's all it took. The real lesson here isn't about who pulled the trigger. It's about who decided Castellano was expendable. Gotti's ambition, Gravano's calculation, DeCicco's betrayal, the commission's silence, Castellano's own arrogance, all of it combined into a perfect trap. And Castellano walked right into it. Because in the Mafia, when the people below you want what you have, you're already finished. You just don't know it yet. If you enjoyed watching the film on why Goodfellas never showed you the secret revenge of John Gotti, then you'll want to see our film on why Sopranos never showed who Vincent Vinny Ocean Palermo really was popped up on the upper left of your screen.